Remember the last time you were in an interactive haunted house during Halloween time, or even a haunted house type exhibit at your local carnival?
Everyone at some point or another has experienced such an interactive fun. But what if I told you that kind of interactive spookiness was actually the norm for moviegoers many decades ago?
From the 1930s to the 1970s, audiences would pack movie theaters at maximum capacity in order to see what were called midnight spook shows, or midnight horror shows, in which people in monster and ghost costumes would run up and down the aisles of the audience, magicians would perform on stage, floating objects and ghosts would float above the audience on some type of lowering device, and finally, sound effects of screaming and other sounds would be blasted all over the theater.
As you can imagine, the midnight spook shows were an absolute blast. You were either legitimately tearing up and laughing due to the absurdity and hysterical nature of it all, or you were actually terrified because people hyped it up that way and you just didn't know what to think because it was just such a new experience. Nonetheless, though, kids would flock to it, teenagers would flock to it as well because why wouldn't they? And adults with too much time on their hands would actually find themselves in the audience enjoying a midnight spook show. It was really fun.
Usually, the ghost shows were put on by gimmicky businessmen who insisted on being magicians or just people who could put on a spectacular show, and due to this, business was booming. Not only because television was still in its infancy, but also because there was a massive audience dedicated to the ghost shows as a result of the immense popularity of monster movies at the time, which still persists to this day. Ghost show masters such as Dr. Satan's Shriek of the Night or Count Orloff and even Dr. Evil would assemble their own takes on the ghost shows, raking in the big bucks as the shows were a lot of fun and a massive success.
But today I want to talk about a particular DVD that I feel best personifies the midnight spook shows best, and an outlet which is really the closest to actually experiencing a midnight ghost show that we have today, and probably the only outlet for that to even happen in the first place. And that is Monsters Crash the Pajama Party, Spook Show Spectacular. Let's delve right in.
Released in 1965, Monsters Crash the Pajama Party is only about 30 minutes and is one of the silliest things you'll ever see. The plot consists of a mad scientist occupying the basement of a haunted house where he conducts evil experiments with the help of his servant Gorilla Monster. But a bunch of sorority girls decide to have a slumber party in the supposedly haunted house, whereas the boys decide to play pranks on them with cheap Halloween masks. Nonetheless, the mad scientist demands his gorilla to kidnap the girls so that the scientist can turn the girls into gorillas themselves. Oh, and the acting is just what you would really expect.
I believe your students call it Haunted House Lane or something like that. That's what I'm calling about.
One of the dumbest plots one can imagine, but it's just so fun.
You find yourself walking home alone in the dark, and you hear strange footsteps behind you. And when you turn around to look, if you dare look, you will see nothing.
There even exists a radio advertisement just going to show how much they really promoted it.
It's so scary, we dare you to see The Monsters Crash the Pajama Party, the first movie ever filmed in horror vision, Hollywood's latest miracle.
The gimmick of the movie is that there were actually actors planted in the audience, and when the time was right, local teenagers hired to play the costumed monsters would run into the audience and take the planted actors out, in an attempt to freak out the audience itself.
The entire point of the gimmick was for the monster to essentially bring the actor to the movie screen, or at least that was the point. A costume monster would run into the audience, grab a planted actor, and actually make it look like the monster was taking that person into the film screen. Of course, the actors and actresses dressed up the same way as the characters in the movie did to make it look even more realistic.
Aside from the movie, the DVD is home to tons of extra content, which really make up the bulk of the DVD. There's about 45 minutes of just non-stop radio advertisements regarding the spook shows.
Almost all the screen's scariest monsters alive, in person. Teenage Frankenstein, daughter of Dracula, the Fly, a man's body, a fly's head.
This was always my favorite part of the set because it really feels as if you're in a theater watching these previews before the start of the movie. The menus are just amazing. You can find anything from a gravestone to a bat and even more hidden things to press on, which may give you everything from a series of 1920s homemade horror movies to an actual spook show ride from a carnival, a dancing skeleton, and so much more, making it the perfect thing to have playing in the background to any Halloween party. A personal favorite of mine is a short clip of a man turning into a werewolf at a drive-in movie theater, and then just automatically attacks his girlfriend. One of the most nonsensical and stupid things I've ever seen, but I love it. The 3D glasses are actually reserved for a short 3D clip literally filmed in someone's front yard. Cheesy, yet curiously fun. There is even an educational film titled Don't Be Afraid, in which a mother tells her son that it is important to stand up to your fears and never let your fears and circumstances take advantage of you, which makes it extremely heartwarming, and it actually aged really, really well.
Something Weird Video, which by the way, as the name obviously suggests, puts out the weirdest things you could ever imagine, did an absolutely amazing job with this. It really feels like you're actually going back in time and watching one of the midnight spook shows with an audience back in the 50s and 60s. And that is where this DVD succeeds best. Even if you're not a fan of physical media, this is still a must-have, especially for Halloween.
But overall, Monsters Crash the Pajama Party is a schlocky short film built by gimmicks and for gimmicks only, with the real treasures embedded within everything else available on the disc. It's a midnight spook show extravaganza that can fit right in your own hands, a chance to experience the exciting and fun horror experiences from the days gone by. But hopefully, one day, the midnight spook shows definitively return in some form or another.